Yes, yes. Welcome in to the Tim McKernan Show, a whole new chapter here for a podcast that began in 2017 with strictly audio. And now you will be able to watch our interviews and our questions from the audience as well. Tim McKernan and Action Jackson Burkett with you. Our guest today from the HomeLoanExpert.com studios, the great Joe Buck. We had a chance to talk about a wide variety of topics, and you'll be able to watch all of it here on YouTube, or you can go and listen to it in its entirety should you be driving, working out, however you listen to your podcasts on tmastl.com. Our podcasts / video interviews are made possible by Ryan Kelly, the HomeLoanExpert.com. Our guest sponsor is Tullamore Dew, and our loyal sponsors here of the Tim McKernan Show podcast, Seth Goldcamp, Design Air Heating and Cooling, James Carlton of the Carlton State Farm Insurance Agency, Jamie Burkhardt and Clayton Patterson at Munganess, St. Louis Acura.com and AltonToyota.com, and Mark Hanna of Evergreen Wealth Strategies. Joe Buck and I had a chance to talk it over, Jackson, regarding a wide variety of topics. What did you want to hear from Joe Buck the most on?
Two things. I wanted to hear about his experience at the Super Bowl in LA, because that fascinates me, the pomp and circumstance around the event itself, and then how it actually played out. Because on TV, it looks like the coolest thing you ever seen. And Joe kind of gives you the lowdown about how it actually went out, being in the stadium, and then hearing about his thoughts on baseball, as a guy who's called 24 World Series in a row, to discuss, what he thinks about the current work stoppage and the way that baseball is heading. I think is fascinating, and I think anyone with interest in sports will love to hear it.
You're going to get to hear on both of those topics, in addition to getting into the future of his NFL broadcast partner on Fox. He is really good friends with Troy Aikman, and Troy Aikman might be leaving Fox. So we talked about that, talked about how the game of baseball has changed since he first called the World Series in 1996. And the Super Bowl halftime show was a portion of this conversation. And if you are a golf nerd, who Joe has had a chance to play golf with recently, the level of player, he just kind of threw that in.
I know.
You'll get that right at the end. So here in our very first video edition of the Tim McKernan Show, ladies and gentlemen, it is our pleasure to present from the HomeLoanExpert.com studios, Joe Buck. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show.
Man, it's like I haven't seen you in years, because I haven't seen you in years.
We really haven't. I was thinking about I think the last time I saw you, I was talking you through your club championship defeat. And we spent, I think, about 40 minutes on it, and I could have gone another hour.
Yeah, I mean, those are brutal. We got to do better than old golf stories if I'm going to come on this thing again. But I'm happy for you. Congratulations on number 2.
Thank you.
You guys really crank out good-looking kids. I think I speak on behalf of humanity when I say keep going.
I think we're going to tap out. I think we're going to wrap it up. I think
How old of a fella are you these days?
I'm 45 years old.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, I know you had your twins at 49. Am I right?
49. Yeah, you're good like that. 49. And the math is terrible when I think about where I'll be when they're doing things in their life where they probably would want their father around, at least participating. But as opposed to at best drooling down my shirt. But hey, it is what it is. It was either that or they don't come into the world. So I guess they'd pick that.
That's exactly right. And that's how I view it as well. Yeah, I think I'm going to shut her down. I was legitimately going to ask this. How is it different now raising 2 boys in your 50s versus raising 2 girls? With Natalie born when you were in your 20s, right?
Natalie in 90, I was 29.
Okay.
No, that's wrong. I was, what's 1996?
So you were
25. I was like 27.
27. It's great. 2 broadcasters doing math
I mean, come on. One time I was texting with Mike Tirico, huge name drop there, and I was watching him do a Sunday night game or Monday night game, whatever he was doing. And I said, it just pisses me off because I know you just gave the length of that punt by doing the math in your head. Like if a punter punts it from his own 28 and the guy catches it on the other side of the 50 at that team's 36, I could be a hostage for 3 weeks and I couldn't come up with how far that was. And he just does it like right away. And I just, my mind does not work like that. It's like I need an MRI, but I would be more concerned if at one point I could do simple math and now I can't. I could never do simple math. I could never do it. I was horrible in school in math, just didn't get any of it.
So how do you get that information? Steve Horn glides in and he says that was a 48-yard punt. Is that what happens?
No, Steve Horn is way above that. I have a guy named Ed Svita from Philly who went to Villanova, who is my brain in an ill-fitting pair of pants over to my left. He is unbelievable, and he's good. Like, you know, he's got those numbers right away, how far the punt was, how far the return was. He just puts a slash and you got the punt on the left and the return on the right. And then constantly he's even able to kind of step back and look at timeout situations or whatever it might be. So I've got so much support around me when I'm doing an NFL game. There's really no reason to make any kind of clerical mistakes. There may be editorial mistakes, but that's kind of where Horn comes in. Like, what are the points that are worthwhile bringing up, and where do you go in history to compare what's going on with, let's say, the year that Tom Brady's having compared to the year that George Blanda had back when he was 94 and playing quarterback. So those are the things that I use Steve for: history, medicine, politics, whatever. The numbers, that's Ed Svita.
That's where he comes into play. I have to tell you this, and I think you know this, but I am a huge fan of Daddy Issues, your podcast with Oliver Hudson. I truly am. And I know you're going to shake your head and you're going to go, no, but I love the podcast. Do you love doing the podcast? I love listening to you two. And I love when you guys just bullshit too. I like that. And you got great guests, but I like when you guys just bullshit.
Yeah, I think we've kind of settled on the fact that it's paying us exactly nothing. So,
you know, they are commercials. You should be getting something.
You would think. I don't know when those bills come due. I mean, we're 2 years into this thing, and I think I've made maybe $8,000 on the whole venture. Wow. But yeah, we do it because we love talking to each other, and it's fun, and it's good for me to kind of take my career into my own hands and say things that are now recorded that someday will be thrown back in my face as I, whatever, get canceled. But we like to have fun, and we're good friends. We've become better friends through the podcast, which is nice. So we love doing it, but where we settled on was, why bother friends of ours or try to book guests when eventually that bill comes due? Now you're doing, podcasts all over the place for Strahan or Smartless or whatever, which that was a blast doing, but you're just constantly doing podcasts for everybody else because they came on yours, and it's not really getting us anything. So we might as well just sit and bullshit and have fun and piss our wives off by the things we say. This last one that just came out this week, if this one doesn't get me divorced for a second time, nothing will. I mean, the stuff we say. I listened to
it on the way out to the station this morning. You talking about Michelle being irritated with you because you left the Super Bowl early and you didn't want to go to the Bieber party, Bieber lip syncing, Oliver talking the language of love. And I'm telling you, I can't get enough of it.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Michelle and I are just the languages of love, which that's Oliver's big thing, right, as he's waxing poetic about that garbage. And his language of love is touch, and his wife's language of love is acts of service, and my language of love is evidently touch. If Michelle comes up and touches me on the shoulder or the neck without me asking for it, but me, I'm just like all over her, and that is her anti-language of love. That's her language of hate. So then she spins on me like, stop grabbing me. But she wants to dance in our room at the end of the night when the boys are asleep. And
is that a nightly event? Because I saw Oliver, or I listened to Oliver break that down with you.
yeah,
And then his wife
no,
comes in and they break it
no,
down.
no. I mean, would she like it to be a nightly event? Yes. Can I muster the courage to do that more than once a month? No. And I'm way too insecure to dance with her, even when it's only the two of us. That's kind of the sad state of my mind.
Well, I seriously love the podcast. And I was wondering what it would be like if even your peers, like if Nance or Al Michaels or whoever else is on the current level of you in the world of sportscasting were to do this. But you do this. Those guys don't do this. And even if they did, they wouldn't do it like you are doing it. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like when I wrote a book. If you're going to write a book, why hold things back? I mean, you have to talk about things like raising kids, and you have to talk about things like going through a divorce and what it was like being my dad's son in St. Louis, and what it's like with the social media stuff that I deal with, and being the national guy and not the local guy, and all of that. And the same way with a podcast. If I'm coming on to this or my own podcast and being just guarded the entire time, it's boring. Now that comes with a price, because we live in a world now where even unintended comments that can offend can get you in a lot of trouble. And so you have to walk that line still. I can't say all the things that I do or all the things that cross my mind, but I at least push it further than I would when I'm doing a national broadcast, which is probably not smart because everything goes everywhere. So if I say something stupid and somebody picks it up, it's going to go everywhere anyway. So but I have more fun that way, and I'll do it until I get in trouble, and then I'll go live somewhere else and never see anybody again.
It's like the Larry Sanders Show, relocating to Montana.
Yes.
Did you ever have you been scolded? And even if you were, you probably wouldn't say it, but I feel obligated to ask it. I hope
No,
you haven't.
no,
So when you sit on the
no.
podcast or when you go on Pardon My Take or whatever you're doing.
No, I think, well, first of all, when I did Pardon My Take, that was set up by Fox
Oh.
PR. So that was not them reaching out to me or reaching out to some publicist that I employ. That was through Fox PR. And when I was on there, I was like, because I had never heard of it the first time I went on, and I didn't know what the tone of the show was. And immediately you're just in there basically fighting for your life and scrapping with these guys. And I was like, okay, yeah, you want to go here? I'll fucking go here right now. And then afterward, I was like, did I just go to some place that I shouldn't have? But then I took some solace in that Fox set it up. So that didn't really concern me after that. I would say that's the one great thing, and there are many, but that's a great thing about working at Fox. They let me kind of do my own thing, and they trust me to really make the right decision, and they know my heart. I mean, they know that I'm not out to offend. I'm not out to say stuff just to get a reaction. I'm not looking for the quote unquote hot take. So
Yeah.
They trust my judgment that way until I give them reason not to. And so far, I haven't.
Yeah. Well, daddy issues. I am a legitimately huge. When I see it pop on my phone on Thursday mornings, I'm settling in, man. I'm settling in. I feel like. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's funny you say that on Thursday morning, because at 3:00 in the morning, I woke up and I started thinking about, we had just recorded the podcast that night before, and I started thinking about some of the things I said with regard to Michelle and her inability to really ever finish a book that she starts or whatever. And I was like, God, she's great, and she's going to laugh at most of this stuff, but that's really going to piss her off. So, Oliver saying something else that I can't, and Oliver has no inhibition with anything. And
that's why it works so well, because you guys are like a foil. You have a foil.
I do, and it is kind of like The Odd Couple, and he's the sloppy, pot smoking actor guy, and I'm the straight laced Felix, and so it works that way. But at 3:00 in the morning, I'm texting our editor that puts this thing online or whatever he does. And I said, I don't know if you're up. It was 1:00. I said, if you're up, will you take this little chunk out? Because I can't have this out there. Michelle's going to kill me. And he did. And then you see it pop up on your phone on Thursday, and you're not seeing the full full Monty on that one.
It has been edited. All right, I want to ask you a couple of things that I know that you get asked a lot, but I was hoping you could maybe give me just take the guard
Something
down.
new.
Yeah, like when you said about when you were on when we went through the club championship thing, with regards to baseball. Now, as we were talking there in a work stoppage, I'm curious on this because I'm sure people ask you, well, when's it going to be over? As if you have any clue or any preference one way or the other. I'm sure sooner rather than later. But from your perspective, how has the game changed since you called your first World Series in '96 versus now? Because for me personally, and I know you can't say this, but it seems like it's changed to the sense that I'm not as into it as I was. And I'm sure that comes with age, but I also feel the game has changed.
Totally.
You're calling World Series. What do you see there? And what can they do to perhaps re-engage?
Well, here's the funny thing, and this is a new phenomenon that I think John Smoltz and I really have found out. I don't want to say the hard way, because on many levels, I don't really care, because I've done it long enough, and I've done 24 World Series, and next year will be my 25th, and that's the way that math works out. And I'm just like, hey, I'm allowed to have an opinion too, and baseball is well aware that something has to change once the inning starts. Like they've been worried about time of game. We got the time of game from 3 hours and 6 minutes down to 3 hours and 2 minutes on average. Who cares? That's not the issue. That's NFL games are 3 hours. Nobody complains that the game's too long. That's not the problem. The problem is, and the players know this, the owners really know this, is the lack of action. And it's become so analytically driven. It just shows in some ways how smart analytics are, because they have ways of putting 9 guys out there to give that defense the best chance to make plays on baseballs, except for the ones that fly over the wall. And so consequently, with the shifts and everything else that had happened, there's a lot less action. And, you're asking me this at a great time, because last night I hosted an event for Ozzy downtown, where you see the 1982 team come to life. He had the infield there with him. Whitey was there at the age of 90. And Keith Hernandez was there via satellite. He just had hip surgery, and it killed him to not be there. But there's Ozzy and Tommy Herr and Kenny Oberkfell and Keith Hernandez. Jim Cott came in, who's going into the Hall of Fame. And just to research for 10 minutes before I went out there, actually it was 26 minutes and 39 seconds, however long the 1982 year-end film was. You start looking at what baseball was in the early 80s, and it's an entirely different game. The Cardinals were a thrilling team, and they hit 67 home runs as a team that year. Tommy Herr in 1985 drove in 110 runs and hit 8 home runs. He's the last National Leaguer to knock in over 100 runs with less than 10 home runs. And that's because they got guys on base. They moved them over. They got runs driven in without benefit of a hit, without waiting for the long ball. What I started to say earlier was, for some reason now, if John Smoltz or I say anything like, this game needs to look at the lack of action, and analytics are great. I mean, even Whitey was talking about analytics are great, but that can't be the only thing you look at to make a lineup or to make in-game decisions. And then all of a sudden we're the get off my lawn guys, and you hate the game. It's actually the opposite. I love the game of baseball. I just don't know that this version of it is really what anybody hoped it would be. After all the analytics got piled into this game. Now, home runs are great. I love calling them. I love watching them. Fans love seeing them, but there's not 10 home runs a game. It's a couple, and then otherwise it's a lot of standing around. So everybody knows that the pace needs to be picked up, that the ability to hit the ball the other way has got to come back into the game. The stolen base is gone. There are little subtle things that always added up to make baseball great that have been kind of phased out because of the way it's played now. And, Whitey talked about it with me last night. he's still so sharp and so in love with the game. He said what I've always said: call strikes. That's the only way to speed this thing up. And you start looking at that 1982 highlight reel, and Darrell Porter's receiving pitches that are clearly outside, that's strike three, and nobody's standing around arguing about it. You just move on. So calling strikes, I think they may have to ban the shift, which I was never, these guys can't figure out how to hit the ball the other way, but I guess they can't. So, go back if you can and get some action going on the bases. That's what makes baseball the greatest game on earth.
So do you think that anything will come out of the work stoppage with regard to on-field play that could help the game? Is that one of the things you think could come out of it, the banning of the shift? Or do you think they're just going to try to settle economics and then just get through this?
I think the economics are such a big part of it that this other stuff probably gets lost in the wash. But you know this as well as I do. The commissioner's had the ability over the last couple of years to institute some things, and he didn't do it, like pitch clock and banning shifts. I know they want to make bigger bases, which I guess is something that they can agree to on. But for the most part, the universal DH, that'll be in there. But it's more economics, and when can a young player earn more money in arbitration, and when is a player free to be a free agent? And those two pieces are so far apart at the moment. The actual on-field product and what they could change to expedite the action or ramp up the action. I hope it gets talked about, but I don't know that it will.
You were at the Super Bowl. You got to see the Rams win the Super Bowl. You know how that played in the St. Louis metropolitan area. Attempting to take that out of the equation. What was the experience like? And what is the facility like, and what was your experience like at the Rams and Bengals?
It was that stadium's unbelievable. It's beautiful, and I know that people hear that's like a knife to the heart, but that doesn't really have anything to do with St. Louis. I know that they're out there and they left St. Louis, and I was extremely vocal at the time, probably potentially at my own peril, because I work for a network and they're based in LA, and Stan Kroenke is bringing his team to Los Angeles, and some team was going to end up there, but I didn't like the way it went down. And I don't back off that, but I have to move on. So, I'm out there calling a championship game or week 18 against San Francisco. And then I went as a fan. I was out there with Michelle, and I was out there with my daughter Trudy and her boyfriend, Christian Fisher. And we went to the game and had a blast. I mean, it's a massive facility that took forever to get into from the parking lot. But when you walk in and you're sitting there, and we were, 10, 15 rows behind Kanye and Judd Apatow and his wife, Leslie Mann. And, we're walking to our seat. Tracy Morgan's 1 inch from me on the right. It's a different experience. So we had fun, but Michelle and I left early, as you said, as you heard. I was like, I don't care who wins this game. And we already saw the halftime, which for us stunk because it was played to the entire other half of the stadium. So that's the only reason why my wife wanted to really go to the game, was for halftime. But all in all, it was a nice experience. And, it's good to go as a fan, knowing that I'm going to do it next year as a broadcaster.
Was it irritating while the halftime? Were you sitting there going, "Oh my God, we're not going to be able to see the halftime show," minus the few times Snoop would pop up on top?
Yeah, I was I was pissed. I was like, I spent a ton of money for these seats, and the music, the actual lyrics were so drowned out. It was so bass heavy, and it's as Oliver said in the podcast, and he's right. That's an event that's done for TV. And, oh, by the way, if you're in the stadium, you get to see it. But it was, I'm sure, 100 times better watching it on television. My other daughter's texting us, "This is amazing." And I'm like, "Oh, it is?" All I'm looking at are like wooden crates that are, the backs of them are to us. I didn't see any of it.
Was Michelle irritated?
No, she's like, "This is unbelievable." I'm like, "No, it's not. You can't hear it." And she's like, "Well, I mean, the sound's not that good, but this is, oh, look, there's Dr. Dre." And then he popped back down and he's gone and he's in this box that the back of it is to us. If that's great. Okay. I'm glad she was happy.
Were you able to see 50 Cent hanging as if it were the start of In the Club in 2003?
I saw it on the video screen, even though I theoretically was within 80 yards of it actually happening. It just was happening to the other side of the stadium. So it was like doing golf for me. I'm 1 inch from it, but I'm not really watching any of it live. I was just watching it on the big screen instead of actually just sitting there watching the show.
You did leave early. When was this a third quarter exit? Was this a fourth quarter exit?
No, this was fourth quarter. This proves I didn't care who won the game. It was Cincinnati was winning when we left, and when we got in the cab, and I'm telling you, this guy
the cab outside of. So
we went. Yeah, we hailed a cab.
The forum right there.
Yeah, and the Uber line was crazy. And I had Uber after Uber cancel on me because I'm sure they got near there and like, what the hell's going on? Oh, it's the Super Bowl. And, it was hundreds of cars lined up. And somehow we found a cab. And then I was like, is there something on my phone that can watch the end of this game? Hulu. I mean, it's like an ad for Hulu. I went to Hulu Live and there it was. And we watched the last touchdown and Al and Chris, and we were in the hotel like 1 minute later.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of sad. If you knew, I mean, the total for these tickets, and I'm so tired of talking about buying these tickets, but I bought the tickets and they were not cheap for 4 seats near.
I've heard you discuss the number, and if you want to reveal. If you don't, you don't. But yes, it was not in an expensive.
$24,000.
There it is.
$6,200 a ticket times 4.
I mean, you're dropping down $25K. Now
I didn't care to be there. I just wanted to be with my daughter and my wife and my daughter's boyfriend.
So Trudy went with you, right?
Trudy went with us. Yes.
Okay. Did she enjoy it?
She did. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
She did. So her boyfriend plays for the Arizona Coyotes.
How about that? You're a fan of your daughter's. You're a fan of your daughter's significant others, and isn't that a nice thing?
Oh my God, it's such
that could have been a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and I love their significant others more than I love them a lot of the times. So Natalie's boyfriend Bobby Chapchak, St. Louis kid, they live in New York. It's only a matter of time on that one. And then Trudy is a senior at USC. And Christian's been in the league for 5 years or whatever the number is, and he's only 24 years old. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's been fun watching his career, getting to know him, and it's weird because I'm always in a position where I'm like, okay, this is a professional athlete, and I love hanging with him, playing golf, having drinks with him. Wait a minute, he's dating my daughter. Like I shouldn't. There should be more of a separation of church and state here, but I really like him. So yes, they had a great time. And her roommate at USC, that girl, Chloe, her dad owns the Edmonton Oilers and they have a suite there. So even more frustrating is we could have just gone to the game and sat in their suite, which we did for a while instead of in these stupid high price seats. But
you were near 2 Chainz. You got a chance to hang out with 2 Chainz.
Yeah. Hang out with, hang out with, we hung out with 2 Chainz. Yes.
Tell me about, if you would be so kind, overall with where things are with it. You have the baseball, you got the football, of course. You did Jeopardy. Are you looking to do more? Are you looking to do less? I know one time you did an interview with me and you just, because you were comfortable and you're like, I don't know if I want to keep doing baseball. And then the next thing you know, Richard Deitch is writing about me and you bullshitting like on a stage. So I don't want to create that, but I would think that the podcast and the success of, at least what I thought was a really good show with the Audience Network, with the interviews, it's clear you could obviously do more, but maybe you're like, I'm good. I don't want to do more. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I think where I sit right now is a great mix. Fox is good with me on kind of making my baseball schedule. October's a lot, but now Thursday Night Football goes away. So that's
Are you happy about that deep down inside?
Yeah, and I would have been. I have no problem saying it, just because it's a lot. It's a lot of travel, and then you mix in the LCS and the World Series in October at the same time, and I remember
Are you
my
dying while
dad.
that stuff's going on? Are you dying? Like, are you like physically and
I
mentally
love
like
it.
on
The
fumes?
majority of me loves it, but at the end of it, it's like,
Yeah.
and then we've got 2.5 months left of the NFL season, so you got to crank it back up. But I remember my dad when I was little, saying to somebody, and I didn't get it then, but I sure as hell get it now. He said, "I've been traveling so much, I passed myself in the airport the other day." And I was like, I get it now, because it's one of those where you wake up day after day in October, and it takes you a minute to remember where you are and what you're doing that night. So, um, I
I'm going to ask this, but I bet how many podcasts a week do you think you're doing? I'm curious. I'm going to set the over under at 10.5.
Oh my God, no.
Really?
No.
Okay. All right.
No,
Well, it makes me feel a little more special.
No, I do mine once a week, and I will add on maybe one other.
Oh, okay. All right.
But with 3.5-year-old twins, and you know how it goes. Getting down here to my office is hard, and when you plan it, like I'm talking to you, and I'm looking at the clock because I got to pick the boys up at their nursery school, and Michelle's in Denver because her dad's in the hospital, and it's just life gets in the way. So if I'm going to go on somebody's podcast, I want to give them everything I've got, and I've done that we did it one time with Jason Bateman on our podcast, and his assistant's like, "Well, Jason's shooting that day, but he loves you guys, so he's going to do it from the car on the way to the airport." I'm like, no. We'll wait. I don't care if we wait a year. I'm not talking to Jason Bateman while he's in a car on our podcast.
Well, that's when I was saying to you. I know you've got what you talked about with Michelle. You've been public with her dad's situation, and obviously you're taking care of the boys too while she's out of town. I'm like, don't worry about it, man. I don't want you to, I want to be able to bullshit with you and comfortably. And so I'm just like, I don't want you to feel like you got to do it.
But that's just the way I would rather, do it, get it done, and help somebody out. And so if I commit to something, then I'm all in. But it's getting harder and harder to get me to commit because it just kind of consumes me.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I'm not worn out. I'm smart enough to know that with a podcast, you got to be a good person when you do what I do. If you're going to go on these, you got to go on and give it. But I'm just not trying to add a bunch during the week.
Totally understood. Now I'm asking this. I'm sure you're getting asked it on your one or two appearances when you do these things, but I'm asking it more because I know you're friends with him about what Aikman's going to do.
I honestly, hand to God, because I do get asked it a lot, and I did just spend a lot of time with him in LA at the Super Bowl. I don't know. I don't know how this is going to shake out. I can also hand to God and say, on the health of my kids, I've not talked to Fox for 1 second about any of it, which is surprising to me on one hand. On the other, that's Troy's business, and he's 50 whatever he is, 5-year-old man that has the ability as a broadcaster after 21 years at Fox and 20 years doing the main game with me to explore options. So I don't know. I don't know what the options I don't know the option that will fit him best, but I always hope it's with me. But I can't control that. So I just have to kind of sit here and twiddle my thumbs.
Yeah, and I didn't want I asked it poorly because it made it sound like I was asking what's he going to do, which of course, even if you knew, and I'm not saying you do, you're not going to say anyway out of respect for the thing. But how important is it for you for it to be? I mean, you have a great relationship with him. I mean, he really is a close friend, and so
I just think
I mean, sure, you'll be able to do it. You've had a bunch of different partners, but I'm just like, I wonder how important that is to you internally.
There's just a comfort there that in today's media landscape and kind of the ratcheted up pressure that comes with the job, and most of it's self-induced, the pressure, but I feel like it's a different job than it was 20 years ago. I
Really?
feel like it's
Why is that?
there's more pressure involved, and there's it's not just social media. I think there's very little margin for error in these games. So how important is it? It's just it eliminates kind of the unknown for me. I know after 20 years where Troy's going. He knows where I'm going. He knows when I'm going there. I know when he's going there, and I know kind of how he watches a game, and I know the few things that I'll feed him during the course of the game is stuff that he wants, and the stuff that I could potentially feed him and I know he doesn't want, because I'm driving him into a corner to respond to what I'm asking him instead of letting him just have free reign to talk about what he wants. So that's all stuff that develops over time. And I think people know when they hear us on air that we're actually legitimately good friends, because I think that comes through. And so, hey, if it changes and now I'm working with somebody else, I'll try to develop that as fast as I can. But this is just a known quantity, and that's hard to see walk out the door if that does happen.
Yeah. All right, we'll wrap it up here because I know you do have to go. I'm truly curious how your golf game is, because I am enamored with this kind of stupid shit, but I really am.
I don't know. It's been kind of hit or miss lately, and I'm finding, to answer the next part of your question, what am I working on? I'm working on the lower part of my body, and I don't know if it's because I've had 2 back surgeries.
Oh, have you really?
Don't know.
I didn't know you had that.
Yeah, a while ago.
Okay.
But I think I got into bad habits of letting my base just kind of collapse and my hip move a lot. And instead of turning my upper body against a solid foundation, I think it's just kind of become mushy. And when you have no leg integrity, then I think, kind of, so you're not really creating any force. It just becomes, so I've lost all my power. Now I'm working on kind of keeping my knee, right hip locked in as much as I can in the swing, so I can turn against it and try to refine my power. So that's what I'm working on. I can't wait for the weather to turn here in St. Louis so that I can get out and really get after that. But forever I've worked and worried about my backswing, and I feel like my backswing's actually good, but it's not where it needs to be, because I'm turning against nothing. So there's no stopping my swing.
Best player you've ever played with? Who have you been lucky enough to play with?
Phil.
Oh, you have played with Phil.
Played with Phil. I played with.
You got him before he headed over to Saudi Arabia. That was good that you got him before he headed over.
Yeah, and all that stuff. Phil's probably the most highly decorated player I've ever played with. I mean, I played with all my Fox guys, Fax and Azinger and all those guys.
But he putts for the round, I assume.
Yeah, he's unbelievable, and he makes it look so pretty and easy. Played with Rahm. Played with John Rahm.
Oh, did you really?
Yes.
Now, how did that compare and contrast to playing with Phil? As far as the game?
I mean, is their game? Both are fun. I chipped in front of Phil, which is kind of one of my. That was nice. It was like just off the green. Chipped in. It's like, whoa, good action. I was like, can you hold on? Let me get my phone out. Can you say that again into my phone? But so that was nice. But Rahm didn't say much, but he's a wonderful guy. Got to meet his wife too, and she's terrific. And he's just very no nonsense, almost shy, and boy, he just, as you see, he's got the turn of, no turn whatsoever, and just bombs the ball. It's phenomenal to watch.
How important is it to Michelle that you win the club championship this year? I mean, is that something that she's
for her peace of mind? Yeah. To her, it's a 0. To her, without putting up with my bullshit, it's a 10. So I will not win the club championship. I think that
you've already announced that you will not be winning this year.
I got to the finals. That's as good as I'm going to do. I am pretty much certain of that.
Is that right? You've peaked.
Yeah, I peaked.
Did you ever get to scratch?
I mean, my index is like 1 point something, and it makes me throw up because I'm so not that, and I cannot, no matter how much I play, get it above, these low numbers where I'm just handing out money. I'm like an ATM at the end of the thing.
I got the same thing going on too.
So bad. My handicap is not representative of who and what I am. People are like, what's your handicap? I'm like, I don't know. What's a one something index? They're like, whoa. And I was like, yeah, whoa. It's not good.
I'm going to be putting up an 80 and paying you off at the end of the round.
Yes.
Well, I know you got to go. Thank you for fitting us in, especially everything that's going on. I hope everything is okay with Michelle and her dad. And thank you so much for taking time to talk it over. Great seeing you, brother.
All right, buddy. You're the best. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Joe. Take it easy, man. So there it is, Joe Buck here on the Tim McKernan Show. Jackson, I'm going to you right away. What stood out to you most?
I love his recounting of the halftime show.
Absolute debacle.
Watching it live, you don't really think about, well, they're not facing an end zone. They're facing one side of the stadium. Therefore, the other side is literally just seeing, Snoop Dogg's ass and the back of all the crates. And they definitely aren't seeing 50 Cent hanging upside down.
That's correct.
And so, that's a thing you don't think about. And he's absolutely right. It's totally something made for TV and probably awful in person. So that's fascinating. And hearing him talk about Aikman and the current state of baseball and, who he's played golf with, all that stuff.
John Rahm and Phil Mickelson.
Yeah. For a 30, almost 40-minute interview, you get so much out of it, which is so great.
Yeah, and I also talked with him about Daddy Issues, his podcast. It's great in the sense that it's just two guys, quite a bit opposite personalities, but really good friends, and they're just wandering. And if you like TMA, I think you will really enjoy Daddy Issues. So it was good to catch up with Joe. We hadn't seen each other, as he said at the beginning, probably in a couple of years, maybe even longer, but great to catch up with Joe Buck. And I'm really excited for the podcast that we are now able to present it on our YouTube channel as well. Thank you to all of our sponsors who make it possible. Ryan Kelly, thehomeloanexpert.com, the sponsor of our studios, and then also Tullamore Dew, sponsor of our guest appearances. Seth Goldcamp, Design Air Heating and Cooling online at designairservice.com. James Carlton of the Carlton State Farm Insurance Agency. Mark Hanna of Evergreen Wealth Strategies. And Jamie Burkhardt and Clayton Patterson at Munganess, St. Louis Acura.com and AltonToyota.com. Thank you to Action Jackson for his producing. Thank you to Joe Buck for joining us. I'm Tim McKernan. This has been another edition of the Tim McKernan Show on the TMA STL Podcast Network.